Hi, all. So in class, I did not record the first part of this, so I'm going to go ahead and record it again here. What I'm basically showing you, though, before we got started onto our demo work, was a few just announcements that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of for the rest of the quarter. Firstly, this had to do with our calendar. 2 weeks from today, that is March 17th, Thursday at 10 p.m. is our last day for late submissions or resubmissions of your work. So please make sure that you have strategized which assignments you need to do to get the best grade, or if there's anything that you need to redo to have it done by then. If you're unsure, you can make some time with me, and I'm happy to meet with you to go over what would be the best assignments for you to go ahead and try to redo or submit late. Yeah, so just be mindful of this date, March 17th, 10 p.m. Then, if we go on down to the bottom of our Canvas site, Canvas course, now. All right, that's today. This will be coming up today. All right, so what I have here is your low poly, high poly model that is due on the 6th, Sunday. By Tuesday, you should have a render posted as an embedded image here on our site here. I'm actually going to turn that off right here on our discussion here. So this is worth 10 points, but it's not just that you post it. It's that, I also give you critique on this. So this needs to be posted by Tuesday, by class next week on the 8th. It is due at 1 p.m., so I will give everybody a little bit of extra time in class if you forget, but you have to post this, and there's no way to do it late after this. Now, there is an opportunity for some extra credit, meaning on the 8th during class, you can speak to some of the work that will be shown here. If you would like to, for some extra credit points, do 2 critiques of other student work here live and have some extra points thrown at you. Okay, so that's that one. And then I want to talk about this sort of structure here. So let's see here. On the 18th, I have this due. I'm going to have this come up as soon as I can. When instructor evaluations come up, I'd really appreciate it if you did an evaluation. Once they come up, this will get published. And what I'll need from you is for you to submit a screenshot of your completed confirmation. Not what you said, not your evaluation itself. You shouldn't show me that. I don't want to know. I want you to just be able to speak freely and have an anonymity in that, and then just make sure that you show me your confirmed completion of the evaluation. Once that comes up, I'll give you some extra credit, and it will unlock your final assignment for you. So once this is finished, this will come open. All right. Then finally, you've got your Unreal Final, which will be due on March 23rd at 10 p.m. That's 2 weeks from next Wednesday. Well, 3 weeks from yesterday, I guess. Just move my head over. Right here. Right here. That's the last day that you could possibly turn anything in. Well, I actually recommend that you turn it in sooner, because the second you get this done, you're done with the class. There's nothing left for you to do. Just turn in your assignment. Once that's turned in, I will grade it for you, even if you turn it in early, because maybe you'd like me to give you a grade before you have an opportunity to do it again or do a resubmission. So here, just because it's due on the 23rd doesn't mean you have to wait till the 23rd to turn it in. If you get all of this stuff done early, you're done with the class. You're easy breezy, and you just move on with everything else. That's awesome. At the end of the quarter showcase for 25 points. Now you will also show renders of every model that you've done in this class. You will post it as embedded images in this discussion. You'll want to give me a barrel, a bender, a guitar, a pillar, and your final. Now, each one of these posts has potential to get 5 points each. Depending on how complete these models were, will be that 5 points. So for what I'm really looking for here, I'll went ahead and made the note as well. Is it for the barrel, I'll want to see a color map. For the bender, I want to see a color map. Guitar, just lighting, don't need color. Pillar, color, texture, and lighting. And final, color, texture, and lighting. Now, this is the model of your choice. Now, I also put in here the renderers that are acceptable for this. You can use a painter through any of them, or you may use Maya for the first 3 or Unreal for the last 2. You don't need to do both, just one. And it is important to understand that screenshots are not renders. A screenshot will receive 1 point regardless of how completed your model is. So don't give me screenshots, give me renders. And yeah, you may use the submissions that you've done for our class for this post. You don't have to make new ones. Okay, so you could reuse old work. That's a-okay. All right, but I wanted you to be aware of those 2 assignments coming up. And in order to access them, you will have to do an instructor evaluation. And I promise I'll give you time in class to do it, okay? Alrighty. All right. And on that note, I believe we got started on our demo for the day. Okay. I'll go ahead and ask you to wrap up your thoughts, save your stuff. And I'm going to show you a few things. And since we talked about it and the question came up was there going to be a change in my pipeline if I do something organic? And this might not even be explicitly about an organic model, as it's just a slightly more complex model than an expansion of a standard primitive. Some examples of a model or a 3D model that you're going to make for this class that's just an expansion of standard primitives would be a dice. You're going to make a dice. That's going to be a cube. A barrel. That's a cylinder with attitude, right? So for the most part, many of you will be looking into now more complex models with more interesting shape. And it's not explicit to organic modeling, but just something that is more than a primitive. So I want to share this with you. So I'm going to ask everybody here to pay attention to at least this one thing I say, and you determine what you want to do with the rest of your time. And that's, if you care about your bakes looking good, pay attention to this. And I'm recording this, so yes, you can come back to it. But for those of you that are going to have this problem and going to ask me about it later, this is exactly the lesson for you. Okay. So firstly, I'm going to share with you a model I did a couple weekends ago for funsies. And it's not, I think out of this world interesting. It's a cute, very expensive refrigerator. And yes, I'm making a joke about it, but I appreciated the way it looks. I like looking at it a lot, and I thought I could make a really cute scene with it. And I still believe that I can. Now, I've got 3 models here. The 2 of them that you are aware of and are comfortable with are the high poly and the low poly. You understand this process, right? You know how to make them even. Granted, it might have been cool for you to see how I did some of this cooler detail in here, or how we got this here. Sure. But most of that is just a couple of technical hurdles I could walk you through in a few minutes. All right, let's take a look at these closer. Low poly is unwrapped, correct? High poly is not. We don't care. Sounds good to me. We're in good shape. We know what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and set these both to 0. I've already frozen the transforms so that I know that they're in good shape, right? So for the low poly smug, let's go ahead and export that puppy. I'm going to put it, of course I'm going to put it here because let's do low poly fridge FBX export. All right, let's move that out of the way now. Now we'll do the high poly. Export selection. You guys know how to do this. You guys you're doing fine. High poly fridge. Sure. Okay, we got it. Got everything I need from Maya, right? All right, so let's pull this in here. Let's do what we do best. New Unreal starter assets. Sounds good. Let me get my low poly, because that's the one we're going to bake onto. Low poly fridge. Thank you. Leave that at 2048. Why not? Don't change anything else. Oh, that's very nice. Okay, paint on it. Looks good. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do our bake. Bake mesh maps. Leave it at 512 for now. Why not? Let's pull in our high poly mesh. High poly fridge. Looking good. We're not going to change anything else. Just run a bake. And let's see how it looks. All right. Okay. Now, what's going on there? Well, if I were to look at this in Maya, I had a lot of geometry there. Like a lot. It's trying, but it certainly doesn't look like that. And I could probably attribute this to resolution. this is a pretty low res map, so we're not getting a lot of detail. But it is working. The bake is working. I mean, you see that the smug commentary is there, and we've got maybe some artifacts around the handle, but we can tell that it's trying, right? So maybe everything is fine, and we just need to increase the resolution. So let's do it. Let's go to Bake Mesh Maps. Let's pop this puppy up to 2048 because we know that that's pretty good. Bake. Oh, looks kind of nice. All right. That is actually working really well. And I'm kind of irritated about that. But part of what I wanted to show you is that this happens on occasion. I increase the max frontal and the rear to get a better bake, and we don't have anything cutting off. This happens. This is what I wanted to show you right here. It didn't happen when I didn't move it, so maybe we could have gotten away with it a-okay. But look at what happened to the bake here. It projected the handle onto this because what we're dealing with is a bounding box issue. The mesh that it's using to project is simplified. It's a flat planar applying to the whole thing. So if you're getting a result like this, I mean, it looks kind of good everywhere else a little, but we got this problem here. How though? But what do I do? Okay. Well, this is where you can actually control the bake. Oh, that looks a lot better. We can control the bake more explicitly with another mesh. And that's what the cage mesh is. That's what this guy is. So first, to start off with, all this is a material I applied to this where I reduced the transparency or the opacity a little bit so that I could see through it. That's all. It's a copy of my low poly. Firstly, I just made a copy of my low poly. That's this guy. Applied a new material to it. If you were going to look at it, I'll go ahead and pull up my material attributes. And all I did was just like increase the transparency so it's see-through and gave it a fun color because why not? That's all I did. Why did you do that though, Neha? Well, here's why. Because if I were going to make a copy of this, let's move this out of the way and pretend it doesn't exist. And this guy is going to be my new cage mesh right here. I can't tell what I'm selecting. I don't actually know if I'm selecting my low poly or my cage. Notice how when I'm selecting it in my outliner, it's kind of taking turns because they're right on top of each other. And even Maya doesn't necessarily know what I'm trying to select. Right. So what I did here then was that I just applied a new material to it, and I can assign the material I've already created. On a Lambert 2? Yeah, sure. All right. Okay. Now I'll set this puppy back to 0. And now this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm working with here. Whoop. All right. And now, as I edit my low poly snug here, that is a copy, right? I can, am I using the right one? Yes, I am. I can kind of come in here and make some edits to this. I would like to start to create my mesh. This is a really tedious task, I know. Oops, it's not, I want you. What I'll actually do. No. Here we go. A little better. You can kind of see it now. Popping out. And what I did was I essentially went in through here and I made these faces come out. And I went through my whole piece and did this task. Now, can I just like uniform scale this thing up and it be okay? Well, if your mesh is simple, you can get away with that, but this is not a simple mesh, believe it or not. If I were to scale it up here, what happens down here where I've got an inset here? So uniform scaling up does not mean it scales up from the polygon everywhere. It scales up from a middle point of your entire mesh. So the math does not work in that way, right? So that means you got to kind of get in here. Now some 3D asset or 3D modeling tools do like a cool push feature where you can apply that to some stuff. But anyway, this was essentially the task I had done. Now I had done that to completion over here. Go ahead and move this puppy back over here to 0. And this is what we're kind of dealing with now. I've got a cage mesh that houses very closely and very tightly every single portion of this mesh. right? This is how we can avoid the projection of, say, the handle directly onto this guy here, right? Additionally, I did need to make sure that it matched my, or it also enclosed my high poly, because if this face right here, hypothetically, cut off the letters, it wouldn't take in the letter detail either. So it's important that it also make sure that we get the entirety of both meshes enclosed here, right? Does this mean that you have to do it? Not necessarily. You may find yourself with some of those visual artifacts. If Painter doesn't give them to you and you're fine with not having to move the max frontal or max rear distance on your mesh for the bake, and you get a good bake, wonderful. Then you're fine. Then you're A-okay. But if you start to get something like this, a cage is going to solve this for you. So now let's come back over here. I'm going to go ahead and export these things here. Rich, you have a question.
Yeah, is that due to the fact that when you UV unwrapped, you kind of left it as flat? Like if you had broken that down, flattened it out, and restitched it, would that projection not have happened? I'm kind of confused as to why the projection is happening.
This projection right here is happening in Substance Painter because the bounding box that is being used to do the projection has moved back, and it's now slapping an image of everything here directly onto this face. And so,
what is explain to me the bounding box? Maybe I'm not understanding.
A bounding box is essentially this invisible box that you can't see. That is the number. I know it is the number that Painter is using to start the projection for you. Now, by default, it starts very close to your mesh. And when I had first done it, like maybe if we were to do it again right now, we set these to like 0. Well, if it were perfectly 0, we'd probably actually have a problem. These needed to be pumped up to something. And we did a bake now. It's a little better, but we lose some detail here. Lose some of it. Ooh. We're getting some of these weird artifacts in here, right? And so to solve those artifacts, you increase the bounding box a little to encompass it. And what's happening is that it goes too far.
You're just covering it up, right? You're just putting a decal, like.
So think of it as though the Unreal creates a new bounding box, which is based off of your low poly, and by default pretty much keeps it very close to the original setting. Now, sometimes that does not totally enclose and encompass your high poly mesh, and that means you have to increase that bounding box a little bit, but then we have other problems come up. So the cage is a way to manually create a bounding box that is not automated for you. So what you're seeing here is essentially the same thing that you see, that you can't see in Painter, only now you have control over it. That is not a uniform scale up. So
and you literally, you just expanded every single face on that.
Literally, yes, but not always the same way. So, I mean, I came in here and I would select some of these faces and I would maybe push it out and just give it a little love here where it's necessary. I didn't need to any further there. In some cases, I would actually select some faces here and maybe move up a little bit, just enclose it. As long as they were not occupying the same space anymore, keeping it really tight is very helpful as well.
And that's after inspection so you're only doing the areas that you're having this conflict.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So you're not doing the entire.
Oh no, I'm doing the entire mesh. Because you're replacing a custom bounding box with the box that is just generated for you automatically behind the scenes in Painter. Now, you do not have to do this every time you make a 3D model and you want to bake it. You saw we got some pretty decent bakes in Painter that was automated. That was just fine. And that might be fine for you. However, if you're starting to do some more complex models, in this case, like a coffee cup, you might find this guy is showing up back here, right? That this handle is now projected onto the cylinder. And this is a way to solve for that problem. It's not very hard. It's arguably tedious. You're only making a copy of your low poly and just kind of pushing everything out a little bit. In a lot of cases, a lot of times, just kind of like scaling it up is fine. Just a little whoop, that's okay in a lot of cases. It was okay, certainly okay for the handle. The handle handled that fine. Here, I couldn't quite do that. So what happens if I do that? It just kind of goes off. So how did you fix that then? You know? Oh, I just went, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Just kind of go all the way down. It was okay. This probably took me about 20 minutes to pull it all out and get it there. And then we ran a couple test bakes. Now let's give it a try now. Let's see how this looks if we were to export out the cage. Right? I'll export out the cage now. Export selection. Let's call it cage bridge. Back in here. Let me make sure that I've got the updated version of the low poly because I don't know that I changed the if I changed the pivot on that or not. Let's just kind of bring that over. Okay, again, okay. Let's do a bake now. Bake mesh maps, high poly, but instead of messing around at all with max frontal distance or max rear distance, which automatically and uniformly scales up that bounding box for you, we're going to click use cage. So this goes gray, and we're going to bring in our cage mesh. All right, let's give it a try. Well, that is pretty. I gotta say, that is an acceptable bake, kind of across the board. Some nice results, right? And I no longer have that problem here anymore. Does that make sense? Okay. A bounding box, like I said, is not a required task to do. It is something that can help you if you find that you are getting those artifacts. Because no amount of adjusting, well, I mean, I won't say no amount, but oftentimes when we make the adjustments here with the max front and rear distance here, you're solving one problem and creating another, right? Because this is a very limited amount of control you have on that bounding box. So the cage is a custom fit bounding box that you make based off of your low poly model. All right. Okay. Rich, is your hand up again, or was that from before? No, that was from before. Okay. All right. Let's check it. All right. Yeah. And then we get in here and we start making some cool stuff. Making it cool. Yeah.
I had a quick question. I saw that you imported your updated poly while you still have this program. Well, you still have this one loaded. How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I had centered these to 0, I wasn't sure that it was perfectly centered to 0 the first time I exported it. So I re-exported it just to make sure that they were all lined up, and they were. But to make sure, absolutely sure of that, you can go to project configuration and actually update the mesh that you're currently working on. Hit select and it's picking the low poly again. Oop. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you could do that because I had made changes to my low poly and then I saved a copy of it. But then I'm like, well, I don't know how to import it other than make a new file. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't have to make a new project. You can just change the project configuration.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
And that's under window, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I love baking. But not I like baking cookies sometimes, but I like baking. Reading. Ooh la la. Such pretty stuff. Okay. All right. How's about do you want to continue to work on your project, or should I show you how to do renders in Unreal? How comfortable are you with that? All right, let's do that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is let's start powering on Unreal. I got to tell you, working from my home computer is so much better than my laptop. I'm sure y'all felt it. Let's go to my library. Oh, good. I actually have a current working art display of my refrigerator. You can do a refrigerator for your final if you want. It'd be fun. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with a new level, and we're just going to go with that, 'cause this is what you guys have experience with. All right. I should have my refrigerator here. Let's pop that in there. Super small, because of course it is. All right. I'm going to just delete this guy. All I really care about is this. I'm not going to worry too much about anything else. Just this guy. Oops a daisy. I meant my refrigerator. All right. First thing I'd like to do is make sure that I have some lighting in here that is not, I don't know, unflattering on my mesh. So you now have some experience with 3-point lighting, which I encourage you to explore here. But also what we've got is just like a directional light. And if you want to make use of that, we should probably at least orient either the light or the mesh to be a little bit more pleasing. So if I were to rotate that, let's see, it'd be the directional light. I'll switch over from object to world. There we go. That down. Ugh. I just kind of want it like rotated, maybe kind of on my mesh. So at least now it's kind of like coming down. Now I've already made a material for it, which you do know how to do. Oh, that's pretty nice. I like that. I like that. Now, in order to create a render, we have to establish a camera, because all of the renders will be done through the camera, not through your viewport, which interestingly enough is technically kind of a camera. It's just a very different one, and one that we can't really access quite as easily. So we're going to create a camera. We'll go to camera, just type in camera. That works for me. Yes, there are fancy pants cameras in here. Cine camera that has a ton of stuff in here. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Okay, we'll just use regular camera. Regular camera has plenty of features on it that you don't really need to worry about. Now, one of my favorite things to do in Unreal is when I am staging a piece, is that like I like to kind of get it set up so that I'm closer to, like what I want it to view through my viewport. Like I'm like doing this. I'm doing the 3D equivalent of the director's like that with my viewport, right? Now, granted, I did just say that, like, but that's not the camera. You're right. However, if I get my view correct, now I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to call it, I'm going to set like a bookmark on this view by hitting Control-1 together. Actually, I'm going to make sure that I've got my Noah board up so y'all can see it. Okay. Hitting Control and the number 1. All right. Now, hopefully, if I move it around and I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm going to hit the number 1. It saved my view on that. Gosh, I love this feature. Now, check this out. I don't have to only have 1. I can have up to 9. I can go over here and I'm like, but what if I like it like this? Control 2. Hold down Control, hit 2, let go of both. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to look at 1. I'm going to look at 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. And it doesn't matter where I move my 1, 2. All right. So I've decided that 1 is my favorite. I don't know why. I just did. Now I brought in a camera. I would like my camera now to fit the 1. Please. How do I do that? If I select the camera in the world outliner and right click, I can put snap object to view. The object is the camera. Snap it to my current view is what I'm asking it to do. And now the camera is on my view. I pull back and I bet I can even show just like a default view. You can see my camera right here. There it is. There it is. Now, I had a view on earlier here that's called cinematic view. It hides a lot of other features in the viewport, but by default, you should have it at like default view. So you'll see the camera actor right here. That's good. That's good. Now, what do I do? Well, you probably don't currently have your sequencer up because I've never shown you how to do one. Let's go ahead and cancel all that. I don't need to reopen anything. Just leave all that close. I'm going to now save my current scene, right? In order for me to attach a sequence to this, it needs to know what it's attaching to. What is the sequencer? Well, if we were going to do video editing, the sequencer is like the VCR and the level is like the cassette tape that goes into it, right? Maybe that's too old of a metaphor for some of you. Do you guys remember DVDs? Okay. All right. So we know that we need one for the other to work.
I remember when my family had a VCR/DVD player.
Cool. Me too.
Yes, I remember.
Yep. We had a rewinder cassette tape. It was like a car that you had to do. And so we thought we were rich because we had something that would rewind our tapes for us. Anyway, so yeah. All right. So the sequencer is kind of like the VCR where I'm going to set up a recording, right? But I need a cassette tape, and the cassette tape is the level. So let's make sure that we save our level. All right. So I'll go to File. Go to Save Current. Sure. I'm going to put it in my folder here, and I'll call this refrigerator. For one little refrigerator, we'll have a whole level. That's okay, because we're learning how to do this. It's fine. All right. So I've got my level now, and now I'm going to include the sequencer. The sequencer this is fine. It's found up here. If we go up to cinematics, we'll have add level sequencer. Master sequencer is like a sequencer for your whole project. That's a lot to manage. You don't need it for this. You're not making transitions from level to level. We're just making a render within a level. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add a level sequence. Click. Now it's saying like, hey, what do you want to name this VCR? What do you want to name this? I will call it refrigerator sequence. I will also put that in my folder here, put it in a folder of sequencers. Click OK. You can see I've done this demo before. All right. So now I've got my sequence here. Now I've made to make sure that in the recording, I'm moving all my stuff out of the way, right? Because we've got a lot to show you all over here. And I think that this is pretty decent. Okay. All right. That's out of the way. Now, we'll notice here that we have a track button and we've got like a little scrubby. I would like to acknowledge that this sequencer is a little delicate. It's a little finicky. You will click some buttons here and you will think that it is just kind of not working when it is. So, because the feedback on it isn't, I think, ideal. For what it's worth, the sequencer is extremely powerful. And it's also the reason that Unreal is starting to become an industry standard in cinematography now. People are able to take like 3D work in real time and create whole film and videos in here. You can edit in here. You can add time dilation. You can do audio. It's really powerful stuff. For us, we're only really going to worry about this one camera, right? So if I select the camera either in the viewport or in my world outliner, nothing's happening yet because the sequencer really requires you to tell it what it needs to be referencing. And we need it to reference the camera. So we're going to click add track and it says, okay, so what kind of track do we want? This is pretty cool because you could do cool stuff in here. You can add a media track, like you can add like an actual video file in here. You can add some time dilation, cool effects here. Okay, but like, let's like chill before I go down a rabbit hole. Add an actor to the sequencer. In Unreal, all things are actors that are things in Unreal. It's super weird. But if you have the object selected at the very top, it'll be like, hey, did you want to add the camera actor? I mean, you have it selected, so I just kind of thought. And Unreal, thank you for that, because otherwise you've got to find it in your list of stuff. And if you haven't organized this, which can get pretty robust pretty quickly, that could be kind of a pain in the butt. But we'll just, yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Now I've got my track here. And if I were to hit play, not that it matters, it's just going to show about 3 seconds or no, maybe, 5 seconds of just a still shot. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my cinematic view so I can kind of see here, but still I actually need to turn on my camera in the cinematic view by clicking this little icon. This drove me crazy for months because I could not figure out why my camera wasn't like uploading and showing me what I wanted to see through my camera. You have to turn that on. And when I would look at like my supervisor's like examples to me and this, and I'd be like, what am I doing different? This guy's just, that's it. Very, like I said, the feedback on this is a little low and intuitive, right? But this is what I'm looking for. So, now you could at this stage, if you would like, start adding animations and things to this. But for us, you don't need to do that. Maybe we do want to move our, see here, maybe we do want to move the camera in a little bit. Maybe we want to play around with the field of view, which we can do. Kind of just playing around with that right here by adjusting that. And now we've got like a pretty good shot that maybe we're happy with. You can even turn on your rule of thirds if you want to get a good compositional layout on your shot here. But you've set it up. Now we're good to go. This is where we do our render. Click this little clicky clacker. It's a little snappy shot, clicky clacker right there. And it pulls up a way to render out. And in this case, it's a movie setting. We've got 5 seconds, but we probably don't need to do that. In fact, I don't even want 5 seconds of render. We can do 1 frame for a single shot as a PNG. Now, if you want to render, you could do a batch render of 5 seconds of PNGs. You could do that too. In fact, why don't I just show you what happens when you do? So instead of an AV sequence or AVI sequence, we're going to select PNG and it's going to render out the resolution we want. Oh man, I got that set to like 4K by 2K. That's pretty good. Could do that. Doesn't need to be that high. I think 2K is good. 2K is good for a refrigerator. But you know, if you wanted to, you could go higher. Up to that is fine. But this is like where you can set the resolution. And then it's going to say, hey, where do you want to send this to? I've got my stuff saved in like an Unreal folder where all of my projects are. And this is my art display project where anytime I want to display my art, I put it here. And so within it is a saved folder. Like I think above the, let's see here, right here. And it's going to send it to here under video captures. You can leave it there if you'd like, or you can send it to somewhere that you know that it will go, right? And this is a great place for us to choose. So I think if I go here, I'm going to actually put it on my desktop. Why not? I'll just leave it there. Just leave it on my desktop. Not really good practice, but that's what I'm going to do anyway. And then I'm going to go ahead and, you know what? I am going to do a batch render, so I better at least make a folder. All right. We'll call it fridge render. That's the folder. Okay, now we'll capture movie. Does it, hey, do you want to save? Heck yeah, I want to save. I want to save everything. No dirty projects for us. Now what's happening too is I got this little render preview coming up. It's kind of a clue that it's working. All right, so that looks like it went okay. And let me go ahead and pull up my refrigerator. All right, right here, fridge render. Look at that, 5 seconds PNGs worth of batch render. Now you don't need 5 seconds. You know, you could just do a few split seconds of a frame and you got that really nice PNG. And let's look at that. Ooh la la. Now I could probably increase some of the resolution here by, you know, like literally increasing the resolution of this if we wanted to. And there are more intense ways of going down the rendering rabbit hole. Out of the sequencer though is going to be your fastest, simplest way. If you're interested, there is some cinematic plugins you can look up about doing really kind of like decent anti-aliasing passes and like sort of like crispy reflection passes in more high intense type of materials. But for us, this is definitely fine. This is a-okay. Maybe you find a warm up too. So animation warm up, this is going to warm up your actual any animations that you may have made that could cause a lag right away. So if you do add any kind of movement to anything, I would recommend adding a few second warm up to your animations before it starts the render. But that's only if you're kind of getting extra and you're trying to make it move or turn around or something. All right. Okay. All right. So that is how you do a render in Unreal. And I hope that gets you kind of excited. If you would like to work on the background, one of the fastest ways that I've found for a quick, like an easy background fix, is that, let's see in my level, I've got a refrigerator here. I guess that's the simple art display. What I did is I would invert a sphere and put a color on there. And then I can actually change the background of my render and just highlight only the asset itself. That's one of my favorite tricks to do. You're welcome to steal my trick if you would like. Okay. Any questions? Pretty straightforward stuff. All right. Awesome. Awesome. I'm showing you things that we would normally really ramp up in 217, but you guys are ahead of the game this quarter. Yeah, you should be proud of your work. I will go ahead and now turn on some of that music and continue to answer any questions. If you would like to leave early, you may. You're free to do what you want with your time at this point. You have only really in front of you the pillar and your final. And if you get those things done and in, you're done with the class. And I will happily grade your stuff if you get it in early as well. So if you are concerned about your final, you can submit your final early. I will grade it early. And if you feel that you could do better on that grade, you can redo it until the end of the quarter. All right? Okay. All right.